Yes, the time for the person of interest that I informed you earlier. Today is former DPM, UDF party leader and former presidential candidate, Musalia Mudavadi. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Yes. Would like to get on, before we get on, let's start with Sophia question, before we get on to serious matters. Do you know you're called Madividi?
Well, I know that's my nickname in there. Yes.
How do you feel about it? Do you know what it means?
Oh, well, I don't know who coined it, but all I know is I take it in stride, and I say it's part of the humor.
Okay.
Yes, so if it is one way of people getting to know me, so be it.
So be it.
Yes.
All right, we'll get to know you a bit more.
Okay.
But first, let's get to the serious matter of insecurity. And I want to play a clip, of when Lamu Governor Issa Timami was arrested, and just to refresh him so that he can bring us to this conversation. Let's just play that clip right now.
Timami is definitely very distressed. He is somebody who is extremely disappointed that people can go to such lengths in order to try and score political points. Mr. Timami told us that since he was elected, he has not had any peace because the people he defeated in the elections have not wanted to let go. They've been using all sorts of tactics. They go to court. The judicial process is determined. They go back to court. And all this is because somebody somewhere or some people somewhere are uncomfortable with the victory of Mr. Issa Timami.
All right, let's start from there.
Right.
What happened in Lamu? From what you know, from what you've gathered, what happened in Lamu?
Well, there are two faces to the problem, 2 to 3 faces to the problem in Lamu. Part of it is that which is related to historical injustices on aspects of land and what the people of Lamu feel about the land. The second is that after the last election, there are some people who do not take defeat in their stride. And what has happened is that they still feel that they must destabilize the governor because he does not protect their interests, which are largely personal. Then, of course, the local discontent in terms of what they see or perceive as unfair processes when it comes to land alienation becomes a fertile ground for people to be trained or to be linked to the Al-Shabaab. And that is why some of the weapons that were used in the hit against the people of Lamu were very sophisticated weapons and very well thought out tactics that cannot be done by ordinary people, but people who may have a strong linkage with a militia group, a well-trained militia group or something like that. So from my perspective, the issues around Lamu are very sensitive. They're not quite resolved. They have to be tackled very, very systematically, and they must involve all the people of Lamu. Yes.
And because the confusion right now, as we try to dig deep into these issues, that one, when this happened, immediately the president said this is cooled by political networks, his words, and saying the current, at that time, the political temperature has risen, are contributing to that. Today, we know about land, and that is the cause of what happened in Lamu. Is that clarity for you, clarity enough to say we know and we're actually dealing with what's happening in Lamu?
It's just part of it. Let me say this. When this started, I kept on saying that it would be very important that there should be a commission of inquiry to look at the Lamu issues holistically. That has not really come through. Because this would have meant looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the security apparatus and then looking at the issues that relate to the land factor. And then third, to look at the external factors. And the external factors here is the involvement of the Al-Shabaab group. Because the discontent on the ground then provided the fertile opportunity for the terrorist elements to strike.
Okay, and right now we're talking about land. Okay, land as so we said about 70%, of productive land in Lamu had been grabbed, according to the investigations, by the government. That was last week, and as obvious as it is, it points to the last administration, where not only you, but the president and the deputy were part of. How do you see, are we going to sort out the problem of land injustice, or are we going to go back? Because what's happening right now is going to happen is a trade-off between who authorized this land. Is it Orengo, knowing who, Orange, ODM, or whatever? Because we're quite lost in this. It's becoming again another political back and forth issue. I don't know if you see this.
Well, I see what you're talking about. Definitely, this is where a sober and proper investigation needs to be undertaken. This is why, for instance, I kept on saying that maybe at one time a commission of inquiry would have been the very best thing to go into these aspects in proper detail. And I still maintain it would be one way forward, so that the people can clearly understand the circumstances around the Lamu problem or tragedy. But let me put it this way. The steps that have been made are positive. Because if you just look at the issue around that the land revelations that have come through, this is just part of it. You're talking of, within a space of about 1.5 years, 22 companies being issued over 500,000 acres, or titles to 500,000 acres. I mean, frankly speaking, that calls for some deeper investigation. And the investigations, as they say, are going on. What we have been able to see is perhaps just the beginning of it. But the detailed investigations are essential. There must be a process of people who understand land-related issues, people who will understand and follow what the procedure was, and be able to discern where there was impropriety. And then on the basis of that, there will be sufficient ground to take the necessary legal action, which may involve revocation of some of those titles.
Some of the titles. But you're the DPM in the previous government. Yes. An allocation of such, chunks of land, 500,000 acres, to whatever individuals, surely you'd have known.
No, that would never come to the cabinet, my friend. It did not come to cabinet. So if somebody was alienating this kind of land, and it was a paper work that was being done, and remember, the Ministry of Land was not digitalized by then. So somebody could allocate this land, and the rest of us in cabinet would not be able to know.
Who's that somebody? The minister who has the powers to do that?
I think that is what the investigation will reveal, because the investigation will reveal who signed what document. And I think we should be patient enough now to be able to wait and see when they put the documents on the table. You should be able to know eventually. Because if I ask you right now, have you really seen the documents to show who signed off what application was made? When did, say, the Commissioner of Lands approve? When did the surveyor approve? When was there a land control board meeting in Lamu to approve these things? Now, those details will come out. Then it will show us the process that was used to either legally or illegally alienate these parcels of land.
Today, just as I finish this issue, Charity Kaluki, the Lands Cabinet Secretary, says that she was in the Orange Party, and like you, she said she had no idea this happened. But party leader Raila Odinga should explain, because his hand is deep in this, because he chose Orengo to be the lands minister.
I think you see, this is the simplistic way of looking at things. Trying to throw blame and say so and so should. I think the position is this: let the documentation be laid bare. Let it become public. And once it's public, we will know specifically who to ask questions. That is the simple position I would take. Because the people of Lamu are suffering. People are beginning to play ping pong on this particular issue because somebody somewhere, people somewhere are nervous. Okay? Somebody somewhere is nervous that yes, there's something here. I may have sanctioned certain things, or I did not sanction this. So now it's a question of trying to make it look like muddy the waters as much as possible, so that it will take much longer, or perhaps become impossible to track the process that was used and where somebody's involvement is in this issue of Lamu. And I can tell you that if they follow and focus on Lamu carefully, go about it systematically, then after that they can move to other parts of the country. But right now what somebody is trying to do is trying to say, look at the country holistically on the issues of land. But you see, the flare-up has not been in other parts of the country as of now. The flare-up, the most recent one, has been around Lamu. That is where the issues are. And I think in interviewing the people who may have been directly involved or whose dockets brought them directly to this issue, I think we should focus on the issue. Don't tell me about Kakamega. Insist. The media, the journalists should insist and say, don't tell me about Kakamega, tell me about Lamu.
All right.
And then we'll start getting to the root of it. But when we allow the politicians to go on a joyride and discuss other areas, then we start missing the point again.
All right. So you feel that someone is obviously trying to mislead and point the public in the wrong direction?
Yes. So we should just focus on Lamu. What are the issues around Lamu? These are the questions. These are the 22 or 30 titles that were issued. Can you explain this one and this one and this one?
And we're good to go.
Yeah.
During this time, you also said that UDF might be forced to reconsider its post-poll agreement with the Jubilee coalition, owing not only to the Lamu issue, but to another myriad of issues. Have you considered that? Are you happy with the post-poll agreement with Jubilee?
To be frank, no. We've had a lot of concern that the level of consultation based on this cooperation agreement has not been adequate enough. Clearly, I was very unhappy the way the Lamu issue was handled because not that anybody should not face the law, but I thought that in matters of this nature, some level of consultation would be very, very important, because when somebody is at the level of a governor and you treat him the way they treated Mr. Timami, he comes to Nairobi, has meetings with senior people within the Jubilee government. Then he's called back and he's told that you're required in Lamu so that you can make your views on the crisis in Lamu, and then you can come back for your meetings. And when he flies there, he's bundled into some vehicle pickup and taken to Mombasa overnight. Why didn't they just tell him either to fly directly to Mombasa or something like that? So this kind of thing is not right. We should treat people with respect, with dignity, even if it means you're required for questioning. That is absolutely important. But there are other issues, for instance, that we feel that the Jubilee government can do better in terms of public broad participation of the Kenyan people in the governance of this country. And this is something we have said from the very beginning. Some people have tried to simplify it and say, oh, Musalia is looking for a job. No, I'm not looking for a job. What I'm saying is that in this country, we have a lot of potential across the board.
Do you feel?
Why don't we tap what is best from all parts of the country and not be seen to be saying that because UDF or because TNA or because ODM has a stronger base in a particular area, then you insist that all key appointments in public office must be skewed to favor those areas. That would be wrong. Yeah.
Because my question I'm going to lead to is ask you, in the appointments since the Jubilee government came in, from the cabinet secretaries, came to the chairman of parastatals and whatnot, up to just recently, that's last week, the appointment of, the Air Force commander. Do you feel they're being inclusive? Do you feel the whole country feels that this looks like the face and shape of Kenya?
I can tell you point blank, people feel unhappy on that score. At least the feeling has been that they could do better. And my advice to them still remains, let us do better. If we are just to take a simple position, if you go in terms of population in this country, and you take percentages, let's go by the old provinces or even go by communities. Yes, the largest community in terms of population in this country remains the Kikuyu community. Then you have the Luo community, and they're in percentages. You can get these figures from the census. So, for instance, without denying the Kikuyu community what is rightfully theirs, without denying the Luyas what is rightfully theirs, without denying the Kalenjin, the Luo, the Kamba, if, for instance, we have 50 countries where we have ambassadors, so going by population, maybe the Kikuyu community would be entitled to, let's for argument's sake, let's say 10. All right? If they're entitled to 10, don't deny them the 10. But if the Luo were entitled to 6, would you deny them the 6? Just going proportionately. If the Kamba or the Luo are entitled to 5, would you deny them 5? Why don't you just do it? Let everybody take that proportion, and it will help. It will send a good message. If you have principal secretaries, maybe look at it and say, hey, suppose we did it this way. Would it help in dealing with this animal that remains a problem to us, that is ethnicity, and the perception that in terms of the governance of this country, people want to see their peoples, or at least their communities being part of a process. That is what we are saying. So I'm not trying to say that stop giving a particular community jobs. No, I'm saying give them what they're entitled to. But do not let the others feel that theirs has been taken by another.
Have you shared these concerns with the president and the deputy?
Yes, I've shared these concerns. I've had my private moments with them, and I've shared this.
And what are they saying? What is the response? Because it's more than 1.5 years later.
That is for them to decide. They have said they'll address these issues, and it's up to us and the country to see it being addressed. But as I can tell you now, the feeling has been that they still have got a long way to go to address that particular issue.
So from where you sit, you're not happy as UDF in this Jubilee coalition, in post-poll agreement with the Jubilee government. So are you, what is your political position right now?
We are disappointed, no doubt about it. You can never have a situation where you are 100% happy about certain things. But I can tell you that within the UDF party, we are looking at critical recommendations, which I will not disclose now, which have been made by our experts, and they'll be evaluated by the party organs. And on the basis of that, the party will then come up with a final decision on how we should move forward. Yes.
Question, have you done...
But I would like to stress one thing, and this is to assist in clarity. and I'm happy you brought it out well, because your question talked about the post-election cooperation agreement. That is it. Because there are some people who tend to think that UDF is Jubilee, or UDF is part of the Jubilee. And that has been a big mistake, because there are three coalitions in this country. Basically, you have the Jubilee coalition, you have the CORD coalition, and you have the Amani coalition. These are the three. Now, the Amani coalition then worked on the basis of a cooperation agreement with Jubilee, but Amani did not fall to become Jubilee. So I just want to make this point very clear to the people who would care to listen, so that they can remember that we are a separate entity, but we signed a cooperation agreement.
The last elections, you didn't do too well.
Relatively, from the perspective of numbers, yes. But in terms of where I featured, I was third in the presidential race.
Because this is the most conflicting part. But just before the elections, a few months before the elections, you left ODM. You're one of these candidates, that people were said, and we're looking, say we have 3 strong candidates, or 4 or 5 strong candidates, you're among them. At some point, Uhuru Kenyatta even handed over the presidency to you, written an agreement and signed. So you are a strong candidate. What happened? Because how it featured in terms of numbers was not what was expected or was projected before. What happened?
Well, what I can say is that Kenya's politics is very interesting. But for purpose of people remembering, my movement from ODM to seek an alternative party was because of what I mentioned then, and it is still coming out today. If you read some of the media, there are people who still express concern that the democratic process within the ODM party was wanting at that time. And these issues are still coming up today, right? But that's now
water under the bridge.
That's water under the bridge.
Right.
Now, when we came to the actual general election, it is true that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto and a few others, in fact it was Makwere, Balala, they came to see me and they said that they feel we should work together, and at that time they wanted me to be the presidential candidate. I was already a presidential candidate, but they came in and said that they wanted to support my candidature, and Uhuru would not then be the president, run for presidency. We discussed. They seemed genuine on this particular proposition, and we said, fine, if you are coming over to give me the support any politician would require and would welcome support. They changed their mind along the way. Now that may have affected, and it did affect the feelings of the electorate, but that is behind me. I want to tell people that we need to look forward, and I am looking forward. I'm not going to waste hours reflecting on that particular issue. I think what I want to look at is how can we move forward, how can I better my chances in the future on the issue of the presidency of this country. So that's the way I look at it. I don't want to dwell too much on what may have happened because it does not change anything now.
That is true.
Yeah.
But because what has been projected before is that Musalia Mudavadi is a candidate who would want to hang on the shoulders of Raila Odinga and now Uhuru Kenyatta.
And the truth of the matter is that neither am I with the... I supported... By the way, I supported Raila in the other election. In 2007, 2008 elections, I gave him support. I supported Uhuru in 2002. This time, I did not support them. I stood on my own. So I'm not hanging on to their coattails at all.
Why has the Luhya vote been dicey for you? Because that has been also another question that asked that Raila Odinga would have not only his backyard support him, but others that is able to form over the years. Uhuru Kenyatta has his, William Ruto, the deputy president, his, Kalonzo Musyoka. Why has the Luhya backyard been very dicey?
But do you remember I was a presidential candidate for the first time in the last general election? How many times has Raila contested? How many times has Uhuru contested? And for your information, Ruto did not contest the president.
But he has his backyard. He was able to bring his backyard into the fold.
My friend, let us...
Is that not a fact?
Let us look at it a little more critically. He was not a presidential
that is true.
Candidate.
Yes.
We were talking about presidential candidates. And all I can tell you is that our community, that is the Luhya community where I was born from, it requires a lot of political encouragement. And I contested for the first time. And I've told them, history has shown that no presidential candidate in this country takes it on the first go. And let us remember that the founding father of this country, Jomo Kenyatta, his were special circumstances. Let us also remember Moi's scenario was different because his was during a one-party era.
Yeah.
But if you look at after that, you will find Kibaki contested a number of times. You'll find that Raila has contested a number of times, and yet he has not yet made it to the presidency. You'll find that Uhuru was now contesting for his second time. I have done it once. So let us talk about this when we see the pattern as we go into the future.
Talk to me about unity, because this is something that is, it's not only dicey, but it's a subject that of political ridicule, if you like. That Luhyas are not united, that they talk about unity any other time, and then during elections cannot even marshal up first to unite and vote, and not even 70 or what percent. Talk to me about these two things. That one, they don't make good for a presidential candidate.
This is a philosophical question. One of the things that you would ask somebody is that what is regarded as unity? Is it when you have one candidate or more than one candidate? We had the last presidential election. Let's take the central Kenya region. Uhuru, his roots are in central Kenya. But who else stood? Martha Karua stood. Peter Kenneth stood. Paul Mwite stood. Isn't that so?
Yes.
Now, would you then say they have no unity?
They all voted for one candidate, though.
No, they did not all vote for one candidate.
Mostly, 95, 98%.
Right. They did. So they had decided that they want to vote for a particular candidate. In my area, I got my share of votes. Raila, I think, also got his share of votes. And indeed, even Uhuru had some share of votes. But to me, I think if we keep on talking about a community unity, we may be losing the point. I think we need to move further and say, yes, let people be educated. Let presidential candidates come forward, because the Constitution does not bar more than one presidential candidate arising from one community. And then, on the basis of their policies, one would emerge stronger than the others at a given time. But I want to tell people that let us not waste too much time always talking about Luhya unity, and then you talk about it at funerals. When somebody dies, politicians congregate there, and then they talk about unity. Let us be practical about what unity is all about. Unity is about offering serious and potential solutions to a people on the issues that affect them directly, and having some solutions that you can put on the table so that they can feel that you're galvanizing something to make their life much better. If you work on that basis, it would be okay. But if you're going to work on unity on the basis that it must be one kingpin in a given community, then we are missing the point.
Well, let me ask this question differently. Do you feel Musalia Mudavadi carries the dreams and aspirations and imagination of the people in his backyard?
I think they respect me. The people of my area respect me. We work well with them. But they have the opportunity to make their choices. But I can tell you, when I move around in that region, they accord me the due respect. They look at me as somebody who can offer something to help the region and indeed the country as a whole. But that does not necessarily mean that they must vote me. But I would be happy if they all voted for me, no doubt about it. Yeah.
Let's talk about, away from law unity, about over a year or so. This administration has been, in the reins of power. We've touched a bit about insecurity. Your overall perspective, your overall score, what would you, first in a range of 1 to 10, what would you rank this administration first before we get into?
I think they still have a lot of challenges, my friend. They're not doing too well on matters of giving confidence to some aspects of the constitutional provisions. For instance, like devolution. The message out there is that there's still a lot of haphazard or disjointed approach on aspects of the devolution. The governors are quarreling too many times that the national government is not according them sufficient support. Not necessarily in terms of money alone, but also in terms of recognizing what and implementing what the Constitution envisaged or states. Let's look at some of the laws. For instance, on aspects of security, there's this issue that the governors are supposed to be the chairs of the police oversight committee in the counties. Now, this required rules and regulations to be put in place to facilitate that.
That has not happened.
Those rules took, I think it's now when they're just about to come out, or they've just come out. It has taken almost a year because somebody somewhere was dragging that process so that the rules and regulations that would allow those committees to function in accordance with the Act, because the Act is there, but then there must be some regulations that have got to be, they're supposed to be tabled in Parliament, approved, so that the governors can function. Some of these delays are completely unnecessary. I still feel there should be more consultation with the national government and the county governments. The other thing that also comes up is that the Jubilee government has got the numbers, both in the Senate and the numbers in the National Assembly. Now, I think by now somebody should have been telling some of our legislators that we are spending too much time fighting for supremacy. The National Assembly wants to battle with the Senate for supremacy. The MPs want to battle with the governors for supremacy. The Senate wants to battle with the governors for supremacy. Now, all these things reflect a situation where there is some lack of dialogue internally there that is hampering this process. And ultimately, the government in power is the one that should put its foot forward. It has the numbers, it has the authority, the responsibility to be able to get things moving together. So these are some of the challenges. The security issue we have already talked about. We are also seeing a situation where the review on aspects of procurement needs to be done quickly because a lot of resources are going unspent because the laws around procurement have not been reviewed, and there's been talk of them being reviewed for a long time, and all these are eating into the growth of the economy.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask you about that relationship in Parliament, and how it works, but you've quite answered that. So let me get to the next straight question then. Do you feel that there's a deliberate attempt, or there's no enough political will to make sure that devolution works the way it had been imagined in the Constitution in 2010?
Sometimes they say old habits die hard. I think there's some element of bureaucracy in the national government that is still not comfortable with the aspect of devolution. And you remember this was a very heated debate even then. So there are still some people within the national government who are uncomfortable about devolution. Either they need to be identified and told to shape up, or if they cannot, then they should be shown the door. I think that is one aspect. We must do more to show that we are helping with capacity building in the counties. Because again, there are challenges within the counties. There are some who do not have the right kind of manpower on the ground to take up the challenges that go with the county governments. This is why we also had the transitional authority, which was to do an audit of all the counties, make specific recommendations on what needs to be done to support the counties so that they can take off in a more systematic way. And this was programmed very clearly in the legislation that we put in place. Give it some time, let this run for a particular period so that devolution can take root. But instead what we saw was again a situation where the national government comes in and very quickly they're saying we now want to remove the transitional authority. It does not make sense. So you end up putting people in a state of defense rather than being productive. So these are some of the issues that I would quickly point out as areas that can be resolved by people just being focused.
And now the governors are not only saying they want to go to a referendum, but code also says they want to go to a referendum. I'm going to ask a straight question. Do you support referendum before we go yes or no?
Referendum is part of our constitution. So it's part of our democratic process. Now, I think let's be very clear here. Let me not just rush and say I support or do not support. It is something we must recognize exists in our constitution. But a referendum is so important in the sense that it normally comes up, or it should come up, for a country like ours to help us tide over specific questions or a specific issue. Now, if I were to ask you, the clamor for a referendum now is still in very, very infant stages. It is too soon. It's 1.5 years since we went through the last general election. We have not seen this constitution properly tested. We are yet to see some empirical process that will show us that this aspect of the constitution is failing because it cannot be implemented. All we are saying is that now we want to go to the referendum to do this. But I want to tell people here that the referendum is not going to create new jobs. The referendum is not going to alter the state of poverty at this point in time. So are we really ready for it? Is the timing proper? I'll tell you what I feel. I feel that the timing is not right.
So you don't support referendum calls, either by governors or court?
I think they need to reflect on it. We need to take a little more time in streamlining these issues, trying to resolve them without necessarily having to go to a referendum. And if indeed that fails, then we can move to a referendum. It's a question of timing. And I think the timing is wrong.
Yes. Supposing then the proponents of referendum push through and manage to get 1 million signature trigger referendum process, why would you be on that side of the fight? Because you have to answer a question.
What is the question that will be on the table at that time?
There are many questions. The governor is asking for more funds, 45%, for instance.
But have you gone through the full debate of all these things? We haven't. Before one makes a decision.
But
no.
If we look, if we have to
you see, if I was being pedestrian, I would tell you I'll just vote yes or no.
Yes.
But surely, as somebody like me who has been a minister for finance in this country, who understands what it means when you are saying that you want 45% of the revenue to go there, have you looked at the national debt portfolio? Before you make all these decisions, I would like to be able to advise people and tell them that yes, you can make the decision and this is a rational decision. So I would not fall into the trap of being pushed there, because this is a serious economic debate, whether to do 45 or whether not to do 45. Because remember, the Constitution says a minimum
of 15%.
Yeah, of 15%.
Yes.
It does not say a ceiling of 15%. The ceiling was never put there.
The governor's frustration.
But if you woke up today and you said this is it, you have to look at your national debt portfolio. You have to look at remember, the police service must be handled, and that is a national responsibility. The defense must be handled. It's a national responsibility. Aspects of health must be handled, which are national. All external debt that is there, including debt that deals with the Kaine Dam, which is located in Kiambu.
Yes.
The one that deals with Muzima Springs, which is the water that supplies the whole of the coastal region. The one that deals with Sondumirio, which is guaranteed because it's providing power in the country and it's located in close to the shores of Lake Victoria. My friend, who pays for this? It's the national government. Now, when you wake up and you say immediately that there is a problem, does Kenya become another national defaulter? Because have we worked out symmetrically what revenues really ought to go there through a process that makes sense? Then give the public the hard facts and then tell them on the basis of this, now make this decision. The Kenyan public is being treated to populist positions at this point in time. You have to manage a national economy. And to manage a national economy, you need to make a rational decision on what you will do with the national revenues and what you must do for the county governments, including the fact that some of those county governments will also have to be guaranteed by the national government
if they take loans.
When they take loans.
All right. I was going to wait for you to finish, because I'm going to say, deduction from what you've said then, is that if a question comes with referendum to increase funds to the county to whatever percentage, your answer would be no.
No.
Owing to the reasons that
No. It depends on the percentage.
Okay.
You see, it all depends on the percentage. This is why I'm saying some people are saying 45%. But if you're given the numbers and you look at it and you realize 45% might be a problem, but that question does not have 25%, would you then vote to put your country in a dilemma?
All right, let's move to the next possible referendum question, and this one will be coming from the court side. Very passionate about IEBC, and IEBC in their minds failed in the last election. You were candidate the last election. Do you think IEBC failed? Do you think they did a great job?
I had my reservations about the IEBC also, because just looking at the way results were coming out on the presidential election, there are a lot of issues that have got to be answered. I mean, it was impossible to say that that you would increase the votes of another in equal proportions at every other stage. You know, those kind of things. Clearly, there are some concerns around the IEBC, and definitely that particular body, there's some issues that they have to sort out. But whether,
in your mind, how do you sort out those issues?
But whether it would be through a referendum or not is an issue you can talk about. For instance, if you follow the law properly, and you said that let's all be honest as a nation and say that there were some shortcomings, can we do something about this one? Because remember, we removed the Kivui to...
It was not easy though. We had to go through a crisis, you know, and a commission had to be formed. It was a crisis.
Yes, but you see, the Kivui to commission was not removed through a referendum. It was removed through a different kind of method. Here, we also have an opportunity to show that some of the commissioners, their terms are going to come to an end. The process of procurement was not according to what we read, was not okay when it had the equipment. Some of it was working, and in other areas it was not working. All these are serious issues. But as we go to as we debate the issue of the referendum, you must also remember that going into a new election, and then again you putting in place a lot of inexperienced people, we could still have a vicious cycle of an electoral body that is not able to perform. So we need to perhaps reflect a little more as we go ahead. That is the reform about removing the commissioners all in one swoop and dissolving it, or is there also another process? Have we looked at other alternatives?
What are your solutions to this? You quite have your part of reservations, could have their reservations, and they have a way on how they to deal with it. What is your solution?
I think, frankly speaking, the IEBC must also acknowledge their mistakes, and they must put on the table, what are they putting on the table that would show that they need to reform. And because they also have an experience of what happened. The international observers' reports are there. They have their own internal audits about shortcomings. And I think it would be good if some of this can also be made public. And then we can also decide, do we really need to go to a referendum on this, or can we have dialogue and agree on how we can adjust the IEBC? Because not all those commissioners may be having shortcomings. Maybe not all the officers of the IEBC may be having shortcomings. Because to train these people, it has taken some time. To train them over time to be able to run elections has taken some time. As to whether Kivuitu's team or this one is better is a different matter. But the fact of the issue, the fact that I'm trying to put across is that I am saying and I am advocating that the issue of referendum should actually become the solution of last resort. The referendum issue should be a solution of last resort. Let us, as a nation, talk to each other and not talk at each other. And unfortunately, the way Jubilee has handled itself on some of these issues and the way CORD has handled themselves, they have been talking at each other. Because even when you say you want dialogue, you give ultimatums. And the natural instinct of anybody, if you're giving them ultimatums, is that if that is the way you think we can talk, then I'll also harden. And this is costing us. So it's a question of, can we take a step backwards, all of us, and reflect, and then see if we cannot come onto the table and find possible solutions that could also be cost effective.
Talk to me about UDF, and as I went down and talk about the politics, some of the things that has been said is that one, UDF is not your party, that you don't own it and don't control it. To what extent is that a fact, and what is that started?
Yeah, I am the party leader of UDF. I am a Democrat, and UDF belongs to the party members of UDF. They are officials of UDF from all parts of the country. What is ownership of a political party?
Can you control the members of UDF? Because that's the question that happens now. Can you control them? As a party leader, can you call them and say, this is the position?
Of course, we talk, we dialogue. In UDF, we arrive at our issues through consensus. We do not force anything down the throats of the party members of UDF.
The star rebel in UDF was Senator Boni Halwale in Kakamega. Sat where you sat a few weeks ago, and he said that from his position, where he supported you, supported UDF at that time, was that you informed him that you have the support of the former president then, and the support of the Kikuyu community. He's since come to learn, in his own words, that that was not the case. So he feels cheated and lied to.
I think Boni Halwale spoke for himself. But what Boni Halwale did not tell you is that he was at the meetings that took place. He was part of that consultative process. Why he chose to not disclose that is for his own reason. But all I can tell you is that he was part of the process. He was there when the other people came to see me and said that they wanted to support. He was very excited about it, and he was very happy and supportive at that moment. So one day we will sit, maybe the three of us, and we'll ask him, hey, my friend, I mean, let us be a little bit honest here. Weren't you there?
When you're all being cheated to if you're Then, do you feel then, benefit of hindsight, right? Why did he support you? Because he was one of your biggest supporters then. Do you feel he supported you because he needed that support because of his seat that he was gaining then?
I think so. I think he also had to win his seat as a senator of Kakamega, and I think he read the mood in Kakamega, and he aligned himself with my candidature.
Do you feel cheated?
It was part of the politics. He's still a member of my party. I still accord him the necessary respect, and I also respect his right to have a divergent opinion from mine. That's why I'm saying in UDF, we are very different. Look at what CORD is doing. CORD is already intimidating its fellows. It's telling them, if you take a different position from this one, you're out. They're writing them letters to intimidate them. We have not written Halwale a letter to intimidate him. We are saying it's your democratic right to have a divergent position on some of these issues. That is what democracy is all about.
All right. On to what has happened, and looking at this government for the last 1.5 years, do you think you'd have made a good president, a better president perhaps?
I would have made a good president, and I believe I can make a good president.
Supposing today it's you who are, in State House, what is that one thing that you'd have done differently, opposed to what the Jubilee has done? One or two things that you'd have done differently.
I think I would be more aggressive in ensuring that the whole aspect of devolution works. Confidence is the issue. I think all this clamor is that sense of feeling that there isn't inclusivity in the participation of national issues. I can tell you I'd go out of my way to make sure that Kenyans feel that we are all one family.
Final question, are you running for president again? Will you ever run for presidency again?
I have said time and again that I ran for the first time, and therefore watch me, because God willing, with all the strength I have in my body, I will be there.
You've done well.
Thank you.
Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, thank you very much for making time to talk to us and talking about national issues. I'm talking to UDF party leader Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi. We talked about everything and anything pertaining politics, national politics, scorecard 1.5 years later of the government, and most importantly, where we go next, and is politics. Thank you very much for watching Morning Express.